The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. And please welcome Delegate Glenn Davis. Good to see you, sir.
You as well, Woody. Thank you.
Now, congratulations. You're the freshman delegate with the most seniority. How did that happen?
You know, it really just won a lottery. All the freshmen came in at one time. We picked basically straws for our numbers, and I ended up with the lowest number. So out of 100, I'm now got seniority of 85. So.
Well, you've been a successful businessman and a member of the Virginia Beach City Council, so success seems to follow you.
Well, you know, I was raised where if you work hard, you know, you're able to succeed, and you can go after what you want. And something I learned at a young age from my grandparents and my parents. And I believe if you have a passion for something and you stick with it, you can continue to grow with it. And I've had the honor of serving here now for about a month or so and having a wonderful time.
And of course, you've worked here in the past as an aide to two different members, and your experience at the City Council brings a lot to bear here in the House of Delegates.
Well, it was interesting, having been an aide for Frank Wagner in the early 90s when he was a delegate, and Bob McDonald when he was a delegate in the mid-90s, and of course 5 years on City Council. I have a little bit of experience in, you know, drafting legislation and being up here, but it's a completely different animal when you're the delegate and hitting the buttons for the votes, and it's a learning curve still.
And we were talking earlier because now, given the fact that crossover has occurred and your bills are now over in the Senate, you have a great opportunity to convince your members and your colleagues in that body about the merits of your particular pieces of legislation.
Well, it's like starting all over again. You work the first 30 days to get your bills out of the House of Delegates, trying to convince those 100 members that they need to pass these bills. And now you start completely from scratch over going through subcommittees and committees again in the Senate trying to do the same thing. So I'm looking forward to it.
And you have some pretty plum assignments. You have transportation, I believe, and education.
I do. I wanted to serve on education. I've always been passionate about education. I teach business and success skills back home in our high schools through junior achievement of Greater Hampton Roads. So I really wanted to have that opportunity and honored to do so. And then transportation is just a huge issue for our region and Hampton Roads. And so to be able to serve on that committee as well and oversee some of those projects that are getting ready to happen.
Talk to us a little bit about the city of Virginia Beach. I know you represent part of that in terms of your geographical district, but economically, how are things going?
Well, things are going very well. You know, we're kind of that three-legged stool in Virginia Beach. The government is a huge employer down there. The military, obviously, a large military population. We have a large private sector as well, and then a significant tourism business. The city of Virginia Beach for tourism has changed dramatically over the last couple of decades, and that's continued to grow, so it really is that three-legged stool. Agriculture has really picked up down there as well. It was amazing during my 5 years on City Council how much I realized that agriculture really is an impact, not just really on that city, but the region in general, and how much actually gets exported out of that area to other parts of the world.
I don't think many people realize that the city of Virginia Beach is the largest city in the Commonwealth, actually.
It is. 430,000
430,000 people. And of course, the military has a great impact there as well. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, you know, we have Dam Neck around the corner from where my district is. We have Little Creek not too far down the road. It's the largest naval base in the world is basically around the corner from us. So the population is huge, both from veteran as well as active duty.
So what about the Port of Virginia? It's important not only to your district and the surrounding areas, but it is a critical economic element for the entire Commonwealth, isn't it?
Well, it's probably one of the largest economic drivers of our Commonwealth. And not only the direct impact being so large, but the indirect impact and jobs created from that port. With all the traffic that comes through there, the jobs that are created not only just from loading and unloading, but the businesses surrounding it to support those additional employees and support those additional industries are tremendous. So it's something that we have to continue to evolve and make sure that we're there when all these additional opportunities arrive for cargo coming into our country.
And I understand that the traffic through the port is likely to increase, at least in terms of the size of the ships that come through because of the work that's being done in the Panama Canal now.
Oh, very much so. You know, once that canal is done, we're going to see a lot more traffic coming through, and our port is pretty much, well, right now it is the only port that those ships can come to. You know, you got the port up north in New York, but they've got to raise a bridge down there. You've got some ports down south, but they've got to dredge to get it to the depth that it needs to go to. So right now we've got a very natural port that's already set up for these new container ships to come in, and we're looking forward to it.
And of course, you weren't here last session, but you're certainly going to be involved in the implementation of the transportation funding bill that passed last year. I hear that there are some transportation needs in the Virginia Beach area. Talk to us about some of those needs as you and your constituents see them.
Sure. Well, it's not really just in Virginia Beach in general. It's the region. You know, we have a number of projects that we need to look at for congestion relief. We talk about the ports and how vital that port is. But if you talk about the industries related to the ports, it's all about getting those containers away from the ports, and you have to be able to have the transportation opportunities to do so. So we have to have the roads in the right conditions. We have to have the additional capacity on our roads. And so that's the first thing we're looking at. And then we've got to make sure that we have opportunities, God forbid, in cases of disaster, for people to get out of certain parts of Hampton Roads. Virginia Beach truly is a cul-de-sac. You know, we have water on one side, you know, behind us with the beach, and, you know, for us to go and leave that area, we've got to go across or through a tunnel and under some water. So we need alternative routes to be able to get out of there if something should occur.
So it's a public safety, potentially national security issue as well.
Very much so. It's a public safety issue. It's an economic issue, like I said, you know, with the ports. So I think it hits a couple of different facets.
What are some of the factors that are going to have to be resolved in order to determine where the monies go in terms of the transportation funding? I've heard congestion, I've heard public safety, I've heard economic development, for example.
Well, you know, we've got a board down there that actually oversees and ranks the projects and decides where that money is going to go and what the priority level is. And it's made up of our mayors down there and some others. And Aubrey Lane, who's now is the Secretary of Transportation, was a big part of that, you know, over the last couple of years. So, you know, unlike some other regions, we really do work cohesively down there, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful with acquiring some of this transportation funds.
You mentioned Aubrey Lane, and I think the governor has gotten a lot of high marks about his cabinet appointees, as well as some of the holdovers. But there's an admiral from your area who is, I believe, now the cabinet member in charge of Homeland Security.
The governor's done an amazing job with some of these cabinet picks, from that secretary to Aubrey Lane. It's really been a bipartisan group of people that truly have the expertise in the fields that they're being put into. And I think that's going to go a long way to continuing to move the Commonwealth forward.
Now, the transportation funding bill has been tweaked a little bit. It appears that one of the taxes that amounts to about $7 or $8 million a year is going to be repealed, and that relates to hybrid cars. Was that something you were hearing about during your campaign or since you've been here?
You know, there was some people talking about that. Really, they were talking about the overall transportation package. And, you know, my belief is, for 10 years, we've been talking about doing something for transportation, and we never could get anything done. last year, a bipartisan group came together and put together a transportation package that arguably probably no one person would have drafted the way it got drafted, but that's what a compromise is. And so through a lot of hard work and leadership on both sides and both parties, they were able to pass this package. And my concern is doing things that start to unravel that package or pull funding from it. You know, I've always believed in business. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision, and the second worst thing you can do is make one and keep second guessing yourself. So you make a decision and you continue to look forward, and I hope that's what we continue to do.
Now, you're a real proponent of an advocate for charter schools. As a matter of fact, I understand that you and another colleague actually started a charter school in Virginia Beach. Talk to us about that.
Sure. We have a handful of charter schools across the Commonwealth of Virginia. One of them is Green Run Collegiate, which is in Green Run High School, my old alma mater back home. And it's a great opportunity to have a governing board come in, and students have an opportunity to kind of out-of-the-box education. The teachers are given opportunities to kind of think and act out of the box. We can bring in private monies in and partnerships with companies in the area. We can go after some federal monies as well. And it allows for, you know, a kind of a different learning environment. It's a great partnership between the charter school and the school system itself in Virginia Beach. And I think that there's a lot of interest in that across the Commonwealth as a way to taking education to that next level.
It also provides competition.
It does, but I would say more in some cases competition, and I would look at it more of it's more of a partnership. In Virginia Beach, you always hear that if you have a private school or you have a charter school, that you have a brain drain. You're taking, you know, kids, and sometimes they say, you know, kind of the best of the best, and you're pulling them out of the school, and you don't have that that peer pressure to kind of everyone elevates each other. In Virginia Beach, we actually embedded the charter school inside Green Run High School, so all students benefit. When Steel came in, the chainsaw manufacturer, the first day of school, and they brought a robot into that first day of school, so the charter school could we're looking at a robotics team. All students got to see that, and all students got to, you know, understand, you know, how robotics was going to impact their future and the opportunities for them going forward in their education. So I think there is a way to work cohesively together in a partnership that elevates everyone, not just the students that happen to be part of the charter school.
So a real symbiotic relationship.
Very much
there.
so.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on in the school districts, and I also want you to talk about a bill relating to charter schools, especially related to disabled children.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on right now inside the school districts. SOL reform is probably one of the biggest things we're seeing. There's a bill that already came out. Delegate Tad Greason actually put it forward, and it was a bill that he worked with our majority leader, Delegate Kirk Cox, who himself is a 30-year teacher in our school system. And it changes a number of things. It reduces the number of tests for 3 through 8th grade. It doesn't impact the number of tests in high school yet because of some credit issues and their impact on graduation, so we have to work at that next year. But the great thing about it is the computer adaptive testing. You know, right now when you take an SOL test, Johnny and Amy get the same first question, they get the same second question, they get the same third question, you kind of get the point, and all we get is, you know, how many you got right, how many you got wrong, and you can compare them to each other. But going forward, you have that computer adaptive, so Johnny and Amy get the same first question. If Johnny gets it right, maybe that next question is a little bit harder in that same subject matter. And if Amy gets it wrong, maybe that next question is a little bit easier in that same subject matter. And you really are able to understand and gauge what that individual student knows and where their grasp of that content truly is. And I think that's going to continue to let Virginia lead the way with education assessment testing going forward. You know, we were a pioneer back in the day when we first put in SOL testing, but times have changed, and so should that test. And this is going to continue to let Virginia lead the way and continue to be that pioneer. With regards to the charter school bill that you're addressing, right now the funding for charter schools mandated by the state is the average cost to educate a student times the number of students. And it doesn't address really the child with disabilities. And that's something that needed to be put into the language. The state and federal governments provide local school systems with a certain amount of funding for children with disabilities to provide those resources necessary. And then the local systems make up the difference that's required. And what House Bill 388 does is ensures that all those monies from the state, the federal, the local, follows that child so those resources can continue to be provided for. Some argue that this should be a point that's negotiated between the charter school and the local school system when they work on their contract. But to the extent that the state didn't use regular students as a pawn in negotiations and said, no, you will pay the average cost educated student, I don't think the Commonwealth had the desire for our children with disabilities to be used as a pawn in negotiations either. So this puts that issue to rest and makes sure that the funds that are allocated for children with disabilities and the necessary resources follow that child. And right now we have it out of the House of Delegates and it's over in the State Senate.
By the way, what's the name of your charter school?
Oh, Green Run Collegiate.
Green Run Collegiate, great. Continuing with education K through 12, was there much talk during your campaign about the bill that now allows a state entity to take over a quote-unquote failing school, number one? And number two, was there much discussion about grading school districts on an A to F basis?
There was a little bit. You know, the concern on the state takeover of schools is you have to have two things. One, you have to have buy-in from the parents. And, you know, when you have a school that's not reaching a level where you'd like to see it, it's not just about the teachers. It's not just about the school system. It's not just about the parents. It really is about all those entities together, and they all have to work together. So if you bring in an outside influence, you're going to have buy-in from those parts as well. The second thing is, if you look at taking over a school, those people that are going to then run that system need to understand the needs of that locality. You can't be looking from the outside not understanding the uniqueness, that round peg square hole syndrome. Right. So that's a concern with regards to takeover is, are we looking at people that really will understand the underlying issues that exist, not just think it happens to be the educators in the school, which is what's causing the problem, because that's truly not the case in any situation. The A through F system is another unique one. You know, I'm a business person. I believe that you should always have metrics. You should always stack rank everything, and because you can always learn from things that are doing extremely well and pull from that things that may help entities that aren't doing as well, whether it's business components, whether it's departments, or whether it's schools in general. But you have to be careful when you start looking at a school system and stack ranking it and identifying it so simply. You know, kids, they don't understand a ton of things depending on elementary and high school and elementary school, but in middle school, but they understand A through F. And if you tell a child they go to a D school, in their head they're a D student because they go to a D school which has D teachers. And what does a parent tell a child when he comes home and says, Mom, I got a C, and she says, well, you got to do better, and he says, well, I got to C school, well, I got C teachers. What? You can't have that. And, you know, I went to a school, I graduated, like I said, from Green Run High School, and back then, you know, that school probably would have been rated a D school. It may have been a C- school at the time, and given this rating system. And I remember going to debate tournaments with other schools that, you know, the typical child's parent was probably a doctor or an attorney, and you knew the resources they had, and no one had to say that, you know, this was an A school. You kind of knew, but to have a situation now where, you know, kids can, you know, you go to a C school, it's, you talk about bullying in schools and between children, and you want to be very careful not to set something like that back up. So I believe in stacked ranking. I just don't know if we need to actually use A through F as the identifiers out there, and what does that what are the implications of it?
I understand that implementation of that grading system may be delayed by a year. There is a bill that is winding its way through the General Assembly, number one, and some people have suggested it could have an adverse impact on real estate values, for example.
Well, it very much so. That bill is out of the House. It's over to the Senate. We expect it to pass the Senate. And, you know, if you're moving into an area and your agent says, you know, okay, this house, the school is a C school, and this house, the school is an A school, you know, where are you going to move? And you want to be very careful about that. And I don't believe that it really identifies the opportunity for the child in that school. Like I said, I went to a school that probably would have been a D or a C- school. I was an RTC in that school. I learned a lot about sacrifice and determination and dedication to things through some courses I took. I had some amazing teachers that I have great stories about that really helped me to get to where I am today. So you want to make sure that you don't I put that scarlet letter. I would say,
right,
although you know
right,
that would be the A, and everyone wants the A, but you don't do something like that to a school, because I don't think it really truly allows people to understand what the opportunity is there. But it does have that economic impact, and all the realtors have been talking to us about it.
Now, you mentioned tourism as being very important to your region, and of course, there's a conflict with some school districts who want to begin the school year before Labor Day. And there's a bill that's gotten quite far this session. How do you balance those competing interests?
Well, you know, for me, I always try to pull the emotion out of something and look at the facts, the logic, the rationale in the studies. And I have yet to be able to find a study out there that says that starting school before Labor Day changes the test scores. I've done Googles, I've done Google searches, I've looked at all the research analysis. Actually, I've seen localities that went before Labor Day that are trying to go back to after Labor Day now. So I can't find any study anywhere that said that there was any impact whatsoever on the needle moving with regards to that. But I've seen a lot of studies that show tremendous economic impact on localities when they do that from tourism dollars. And understanding that those dollars that come into a city like Virginia Beach or into the Commonwealth are then used to fund our schools and pay our teachers and allow for raises. You know, I'm very careful to cut your nose off, spite your face scenario. If they can show me studies that tell me that this will help the students' test scores, I'm all in to look at it, but you got to show me one study, because I can show you 10 out there that tell you that it's going to hurt the economy of an area, which then impacts the number of dollars I have. I will tell you, there is a solution out there that localities are looking at, and I think it's been implemented by one locality. You know, you can go to any grocery store and buy something called melatonin. It's a chemical that your brain produces, and it helps you sleep. And some people take it at night to help them sleep. And well, this chemical is produced naturally by the brain, and in teenagers, it's produced between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. That's the natural brain sleep cycle in a teenager. So if you really want to impact the ability of a student and their ability to learn and do better on tests, don't teach them during their natural sleep state. So start school after 8 a.m. And the studies have shown that has that impact. So if you want to know if people are looking for something that will have an impact, that's the avenue to go, not moving school back a couple of days.
One other K through 12 issue that's lingering, and that relates to homeschooled students who want to participate in athletics. There's another bill dealing with that. How do you come down on that issue?
Sure. You know, participating in a school sport is so much more than just being on the field and playing or being at the practice. It really is that interaction you get with your fellow teammates in school during the day at the pep rallies, the community service that typically is done. It's that social aspect that comes with it. So I've always believed that that's really what school sports is more about, not just the performance on the field and can I get a scholarship. So I believe that there's a lot of value to a child participating in sports in general. I did when I was younger, but there's a lot of rec leagues out there. And what this bill does is says that local school systems can decide whether or not they want homeschooled children to be able to participate in high school sports at the school. Because although I believe that in many cases there are other rec leagues out there for children to participate in, they don't have to participate in that individual high school sport, and that is set up for more of a, you know, there's so much more to get out of that with the team than just, like I said, the school stuff, on the field stuff. But there are some areas in the Commonwealth of Virginia where those rec leagues really don't exist. And you don't want to deprive those students, those homeschool students, the ability to learn and get the benefit of being involved in sports and being in that team environment. So I think that local option makes sense. I don't think, for example, in Virginia Beach, we need to have our homeschool students in high school sports because there is so much opportunity in AAU baseball and those rec leagues. But you go to some areas in Southwest Virginia, and those opportunities aren't there. So it goes kind of back to that round peg square hole syndrome. Whenever we can give a locality the ability to decide for itself based on its needs, I think we're all better off.
Well, let's take advantage of your business background because you've got some pieces of legislation that potentially will make it easier for entrepreneurs to do business. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, there's two bills that I have in there now. One deals with business property taxes, and it came from an incident I saw in Virginia Beach a few years ago where a gentleman came in and he was laid off of work and started a construction company out of his house trying to get some work, and he filed a zero property tax return, and he went in and the lady said, you know, that cell phone on your hip, do you make business calls with it? And he said, well, I do. And she said, well, now it's taxed as business property, and do you have a computer that you send invoices or emails? And he said, well, we have a family computer that I owned before this at my house. And she said, well, now that's taxable as business property. And what we're doing is the minute someone says I'm starting a business and they're using stuff in their house they already own, we're penalizing them as they try to get this business off the ground. So that first bill would actually prevent localities from taxing those pieces of equipment as business property when they're still used for family and home purposes. The second bill is a bill that's a companion bill to Delegate Sal Iaquinta's bill last year. He passed a bill that would allow localities the ability to not charge the BPOL tax on local businesses for the first 2 years. And the bill that I have in would allow localities not to charge business property tax on local businesses for those first 2 years as well.
So both those bills passed the House now, and you're going to have to pursue those in the Senate starting over again?
Exactly. They went through subcommittee and committee, and on the floor, they came out of committee contested, and we got them through the floor. Now we've got to start the process from scratch again.
And, of course, you're very active in promoting veterans as small business entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, I think there's an initiative to recognize a veteran who is a good model as a small business entrepreneur. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's the Small Business Veteran of the Year award that's coming out. They do it every year. It's just a great way to recognize our veterans who serve our country, then get out and continue serving our country by growing businesses, in some cases almost starting new industries, and employing others. And it's a great recognition. There's still time to nominate veterans for this award, and there's a lot of other stuff at the state level that we do to kind of help those veterans transition from their military service into the private sector.
We've got about a minute and a half left, but I did want to give you some time to comment upon mental health reform, Medicaid expansion, and finally why the movie Frozen is such a favorite of yours and your wife.
Yeah. Well, mental health reform, obviously we need to do something. We all know the tragedy that occurred with one of our state senators this year. And being on city council for 5 years, I've heard numbers and situations that have occurred in the city of Virginia Beach and the Hampton Roads area. So I'm glad that we're taking a strong look at that this year, and we're going to have a lot of money put towards that in the budget to help solve some of those needs. With regards to Medicaid expansion, there's a lot of work being done on that now. Is there a way that we can have reform, that we can curb the abuse in some cases, but also allow people to get the necessary care they need, to get that hand up, to continue forward and take care of their family and become that tax-paying member again. And I'm hopeful that we'll see some of that come through towards the end of this General Assembly session. With regards to Frozen, I did a e-blast on this, a video blast back to my district. I got to see it with my wife over the holidays. We took my niece to go see it. And so many Disney films, it's the princess gets saved by the prince, and it's that you need the strong guy. And this really are two strong female leads, and at the end you think it's the princess going to save the princess, and what really happens is she can take care of herself. So it's a great story for the young ladies out there.
Great. Good to have you, Delegate Glenn Davis.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.